here. So monetizing the creator economy through social tokens. There's a lot of words packed into that we're going to unpack. We're going to talk about the creator economy and what exactly that means. And then as well, we're going to look at this new concept of social tokens. We're also going to look at NFTs a bit because they do kind of tie in a very similar way, and a lot of the same platforms are leveraging both tools. But let's go ahead and move forward here into that. So yeah, if you want to connect, do connect on LinkedIn or Twitter at Ethan Pierce with an S. We're going to talk a bit about Rally, which is a social token platform that I launched Ethan on in June. It's probably the leading social token platform at this point. They raised around 50 million last month, or about a month and a half ago, from their community. They've got a bunch of stuff that I might mention as we're going along that they've done that are kind of placing them as kind of the main platform for doing a lot of the social token stuff. But we will be mentioning other examples as well besides Rally. And then obviously Borderless Ventures and the Crypto Assets Institute, my main two activities, where specifically on the Crypto Assets Institute side, this is an advisory working with, early on, it was with a lot of different countries or administrations around trying to get the regulatory side of this right, because crypto assets in general were not necessarily being looked at correctly or were not being understood well. Today, it's mostly large corporations and investment funds helping corporations kind of figure out business models related to the blockchain economy and crypto assets. And then on the investment fund side, whether it's venture or PE or family offices, there's just a lot of interest, but potentially a lot of confusion or unknown things about the business models related to crypto assets and blockchain economy stuff, or potentially tokenized investments into something and a fund wants to invest, but they don't understand that. There's just a lot of details there that at this point, it's still so new that even professionals in the investment space are really just beginning to catch up to understand how this can be leveraged and used. Most importantly, because we will talk about money and some different things during this, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal or financial advice. I always throw that in on my keynotes because it is important to understand that while I am bullish on many of these topics, I'm not advising anybody to invest in them. And specifically, when we talk about social tokens, we're probably going to not even refer to those as investments because of the mechanism of the token. We are not really referring to them in a securities way. That may get changed depending on how some of the platforms deal with it and how some of the regulatory bodies look at it. But in general, if I am bullish on NFTs or any of this stuff, yes, I think they're an amazing thing to get involved with. I think that it's still super early to do so, but it is not financial advice. So if you're interested to keep up on a lot of this stuff, I have a podcast, video, newsletter kind of mix around all this kind of stuff, where between all the different events, as well as just news things that come up and interviewing a lot of the people across the space, you can go check that out as well on Substack, which will be coming back up in the creator economy discussion we're going to have here in just a second, if you don't know what Substack is, but also with the podcast and some different things that we'll kind of look at there. I've got a whole bunch of really interesting stuff coming up over the next month and a half or so. I took July and August off, but I've got a bunch of great stuff lined up that I think if you're interested in, again, in the topics we're going to discuss. I am very non-speculation, non-crypto BS. I don't really get along well with a lot of the crypto bro crap that gets thrown around in the space. So I tend to be more of a entrepreneur and VC, looking at this from a who's building real businesses, who's building real value perspective, and not on the anarchist down with the man crypto for everything kind of ideas. Doesn't make everybody happy in that space, but I think it's important because there is a side of this that can be about real business and doing things that have actual real value, not just financially, but in building great projects and products. So NFTs, before we get into social tokens, because we're going to actually bring NFTs up several times during our social token discussion. You're either very curious about NFTs or absolutely tired of hearing about NFTs, depending on where you're at. But I promise you haven't heard anything yet. NFTs are not just about crappy digital art on Twitter. This is a foundational concept to how a tremendous amount of the blockchain economy, and I think the economy in general, is going to be based moving forward. NFT just stands for non-fungible token. And fungibility is just this idea of whether or not something is unique. And so if you know, a lot of the crypto is like when we look at Bitcoin or Ethereum, these are fungible because one Bitcoin or one piece of a Bitcoin is no different from another. So like a lot of commodities, if it's a certain barrel of if it's a barrel of a certain type of crude oil, or a metric ton of a certain grade of corn, commodities can be considered fungible or non-fungible. But in those two cases, those would be considered fungible because they pretty much, it doesn't matter which barrel of oil or which you know, metric ton of corn you get, it's okay. But actually, if we look at something like diamonds, and even in some cases gold, depending on how it's managed, those can be considered fungible or non-fungible, but generally considered non-fungible because, especially with diamonds, each one is actually still technically unique, even if in general you might just want to own, you know, a whole bunch of a certain value in that asset. The reality is the asset itself might be composed of unique pieces. So when we look at NFTs, it's a crypto space, but we're talking about things that can be represented individually. And so we're not just talking about, you know, again, bad art on Twitter. Actually, some of it's really cool too. So depending on what you're into, but some of it, yeah, is a little bit questionable and maybe not the best. But we're gonna look and see when we look at some of the NFT stuff here in a second that the quality of the art is one piece of the puzzle, but there's some other things that might be much more important about the value that that NFT, why that NFT has value. So in this idea in crypto, and really not even in crypto, but in the world of things that are unique, we're going to start representing those on the blockchain. So for example, a concert ticket that gets you in to go see the next Coldplay concert or whatever. Well, technically that thing is already unique because it has a number on it, and that is, you know, that piece of paper gets you past the front door, and it should only get one person in because it exists as a singular unit of something. Well, what we're going to see is with NFTs is things like that are going to become very much digital. It's going to reduce the fraud significantly, because if these things are being verified in real time, then when somebody scans that ticket, which has a digital equivalent that is on the blockchain through an NFT, not just in some database system somewhere, then that's very much going to be able to, one, prevent any kind of double usage of that, because it's very much in real time in the way these transactions are being put on the ledger. But also NFTs allow you to, in the smart contract, you know, maybe bake in a lot more interesting stuff. So maybe for that concert ticket for Coldplay, the physical concert ticket will get you also a digital version that may be visual, like a cool piece of art from the band or whatever, that is unique and numbered. So it of itself also potentially has tradable value in the future. But in that as well, for the person who owns that each individual NFT, they might have access through the tool that allows you to access the information as the NFT owner. They might have access to a recording of the concert. They might have access to another, you know, a special single or download. Maybe that NFT will get them access to a special seating in the arena or at the concert, depending on if it's a special access thing. Maybe it gets them discount on merchandise. There's all kinds of things that we can bake in to basically start connecting with the community through this asset. And so one of the words we're going to hear a ton with NFTs and social tokens is community. This is about community engagement. It's about brands and creators leveraging a digital tool that brings them basically into a one-to-one relationship, a first-degree relationship with their fans or their community. And so NFTs really started to open the door to this, and they are by no means gone. This is definitely going to be a space that we're going to see more of. I've got some examples here to show you that if you don't know what's going on with NFTs, and this is why I would love to be in the room with you, because when I'm in the room with people talking about this and I start showing them the examples, I love watching the faces of people who are kind of like, what the, you know, when not only seeing what the stuff is, but how much it can potentially be worth, or the value that's being created. And so this idea of community engagement and community building is going to be central to a lot of what's going on with the real value in a lot of NFT communities, and definitively in the idea of social tokens. And so if we look at a few things here with the NFT side of stuff, you've probably I don't know if you've heard of OpenSea. This is basically going to be the eBay or Amazon kind of the NFT world, in that much more like in the eBay sense, because it is a auction house. Basically, everybody who all of the collections of NFTs, and a lot of the ones that we're going to look at that have value are in a series of NFTs. So, for example, some of these animals that we'll look at or whatever might come in a series of 1,000 or 10,000 different images. Each one of them is unique. And so you can buy that a specific image of the 10,000, but the website that most people are using to kind of reference each of these communities is OpenSea, where it basically is you can, as the creator of these things, you can connect with OpenSea so that it pulls in all the information about your collection. And more importantly, you can use OpenSea as one of the places where you show off your personal portfolio by connecting to OpenSea with your Ethereum wallet. And if you don't know some of the words I might use about crypto in the sense of some of these things, the wallet is just like where you put your euros, it's where you keep your crypto. And so you have a unique wallet address for obviously each different cryptocurrency, because they run on different protocols or different technologies. You could even have multiple wallets on the same thing. Like with Ethereum, it's easy to end up having dozens of wallets for some strange reason, because every time you sign into something, it creates a new wallet. But generally, you're going to have one or two wallets where you keep the majority of your assets. And so when I connect to OpenSea and I connect with my wallet through the browser and the tools that do all this stuff, and I'm not going to get into the technical side of this, but if you have questions, I'm happy for you to reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn, or we will look a little bit later for the Ethan token in my Discord, where I'm happy to help walk you through some of these ideas. But I would guess that many of you probably already know, since you're in this group, what most of these first layer things mean, so I'm not going to explain them. But when I connect to OpenSea with the main Ethereum wallet that I use for this stuff, I kind of have one for the public stuff I want to show, and I have another one for things that I'm either keeping or that I don't want to show publicly because I don't want to show that I own them, or that I just want to keep them kind of archived somewhere. When I get there, then my profile page pulls all of the information from the Ethereum wallet address that is connected, and all of my NFTs are also stocked in that wallet in the same way as however much Ethereum I have in that wallet and other things. So it is not only kind of the place where you show your NFTs in a gallery format. One of the things that we would see, and if we were doing a tour here and I was hovering over this stuff, I would actually be able to click on one of these and either make an offer, like an auction, or buy it directly if it's up for sale at a flat price. And everything that's on here is most of it's actually not for sale at any given time, but I get every day, I get people, I get emails from people who have clicked on something that I own in my wallet and have offered a certain amount of Ethereum in order to buy that. And then if I were to accept it, the transaction would happen automatically. So even though I haven't listed them for sale, people can actually still offer to buy NFTs that are in your wallet. So that way, if something sparks somebody's interest because they really like that particular version of one of these 10,000 versions of one of these animals we're going to look at, then that's okay. They can just offer. So anyways, OpenSea is really the marketplace for all that. It's the connecting point. What I want to show you here is we've got things around NFTs that are obviously these visual things. We've got NFTs around domain names, for example, ethanpierce.eth. If you were to use that on platforms, it actually points to the wallet address that I use for OpenSea, for example. So you could send me Ethereum, and if you would like to, feel free to, at ethanpierce.eth. You don't even have to know the wallet address, because most of the wallets will convert that into my wallet address. So you don't have to remember the really long string of numbers and text, the alphanumeric string that corresponds to a wallet. So these domain names are actually useful for that. We're going to see a ton of music NFTs start showing up here in the next bit. Over the next couple months, NFTs around music are going to explode. We also have virtual worlds like Decentraland or NFT World. There's stuff that's going to really get big in that space as well. The metaverse concept, which is not just about VR, it's really about all of our digital life. But the VR component to that that's going to become more and more interesting. A lot of that is focused on Decentraland or some of these other virtual worlds. So in different trading cards, sports, other kind of digital collectibles, all of that is something that can be contained in your Ethereum wallet here on OpenSea. There's also Solana, which is another blockchain that is being used a ton for NFTs, especially because the transaction fees whenever you buy and sell or move them around are a lot cheaper on Solana right now, because Ethereum in its first version here is a bit expensive because of so many people using it. That will get better as we move forward. But the point is with something like OpenSea, we have got a pretty much every digital collectible that is out there being pretty much cataloged on this website and allowing you to have your portfolio or browse other people's portfolios, as well as basically do all of the due diligence around what things are worth, what it has historically been traded for, and then whether or not you would want to purchase it, which you can then do directly with the person who owns it. This is all decentralized, meaning if I go into one of these and I buy it, OpenSea will be the middleman in the transaction because it's going to connect to my wallet. But the reality is I'm sending, this is not. There are fees that are going to OpenSea and that are being put onto the Ethereum blockchain to validate that transaction. But a lot of this is very much just person to person, in the sense of I could go to one of Gary Vaynerchuk's NFTs that he's got here and try and buy it. And if he buys it, it's Gary that sent me the Ethereum. So, this is very much a one-to-one kind of a relationship thing in connecting all of these things together. A little piece of news, if you haven't been following NFT space much, or if you think it's just crappy art again on Twitter, would be France's largest venture round ever up to this point, So Rare, which raised $600 million, what, about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago now, it was announced for an almost $4 billion valuation for a company that is 3 years old. And somebody has joined in, I think has their mic on maybe. But the So Rare has raised a ton of money for a very small team that is now going to grow huge. But the reason that it is so valuable is because the entire world of collectibles around sports is already billion-dollar industries between baseball and basketball and soccer and other things in the offline world. Well, just taking one of those like soccer, football online in a digital collectible version would already be worth a lot of money. But by gamifying it through this fantasy football platform and then having each collectible be an NFT that brings with it potential rights or goodies, is a very, very interesting idea. Because if you had Antoine Griezmann's card for one of these things, potentially you could go to the stadium for one of the matches, and because you have that NFT, maybe you get to sit in a special place in a VIP section, or maybe you get to go to a meet and greet that's reserved for people who have the NFTs with him. Maybe you get special access to merch or discounts, or there's all kinds of ways that this can have added value. But the point is that it's not fake value, because they're going to do so much more than they've already done by continuing to build around football, but also branch out into other sports. This NFT space is going to show how we're going to take real world assets, and we're going to like trading cards or other collectibles historically, digitize them, and then add in all kinds of extra value and create extremely valuable businesses and communities out of those things. A couple different examples here of some things that besides owning an NFT and potentially making money from it, what else could you maybe get with having one of these visual, one of these artistic ones? So this is maybe the most famous project right now that people are talking about. These are the Bored Apes, the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And there's a couple images there that you can see, but there are 10,000 of them, and each one is unique between the background and the color of the fur. Does he have glasses? Does he have a hat? How's he smiling? His clothes, all of those kind of things. And so the way that those are made has created 10,000 unique different images. And so behind each one of these images is an owner that has purchased this at some point. They either minted it, meaning they were the first person to create this when the project was made, or they have bought it since then. These things, when they were minted, cost pretty much nothing. Very quickly, they cost a couple $1,000s to buy. And now, what you can't zoom in and see here on the individual prices, but what you can see, if you see my cursor, on here on OpenSea, on every single project, you will see something called the floor. And the floor is the cheapest for sale version of an NFT in a collection. So basically that entry point just lets you know where things are starting at. It's the lowest level of pricing. The floor to buy a Bored Ape today, and there are 10,000 of them, is 48 Ethereum. That is over $200,000 each. So that may sound silly, but it's real, and we're talking real money. Not fake money, not fake, online stuff. This is people who have put this into that, potentially from other crypto that they've made. So maybe this is crypto going into crypto, but there's a lot of money being put into these things. And so that right there already is a significant project just in terms of that. But here's the cool thing. At NFT NYC in New York a couple weeks ago, they had a huge party as well as a bunch of private events. And the only way you could get into any of these events is if you own one of the Bored Apes. And so you would have to verify at the door using your wallet that you actually were an owner of one of these projects. So anyways, that kind of token gating, the idea of getting access to something because you can show ownership of the token, in this case, a visual NFT, we're going to see more and more of that. And maybe it's just a party that doesn't sound very interesting, but the IP, the intellectual property of these things, is going to be baking in more and more exclusive access, more and more usefulness to somebody who owns one of the series, which will cause, I would think these will still continue to go up. Some of them have sold for millions for the really rare ones in this collection. Vfriends, Gary Vaynerchuk. If you know Gary from all of the marketing books and things that he has done, is a very much a thought leader in the marketing space, very much somebody who understands how to see marketing trends come and get in on them and position himself well. And he launched Vfriends not too long ago. This is one of the ones that I missed out on, that I cannot believe I missed out on, but I did. If you look at some of the artwork, I think he drew most of it, and some of it's just terrible. It's these super simple stick figures and things like that. But if you can see the prices on the screen, these things are, I think the floor is around 35 grand, $35,000 for one of the Vfriends. And what he's doing is he's going to have an entire conference dedicated to the creator economy. And the only way to get in is by owning a Vfriend. There are no tickets. You can't buy a ticket to come to the conference. The ticket is the fact that you own a Vfriend. On Halloween, he published 30 limited edition Halloween images of Vfriends, and he just gave them out using a tool to kind of randomly give those out to his community. He just gave them out to people who already owned a Vfriend. The next day, the minimum price going for those, for people that were selling them, was over $100,000. So the amount of money, and again, some of this is just silly in terms of the values, but the point is we are creating very exclusive communities that people want access to for the extra benefits that they're going to get from that, whether it's direct access to the creator, access to events, other things that we're going to see. But this is another one where, again, real money is being put down by people who know how to make a lot of money in the marketing and influencer economy, and they're signaling that this is something that is very important right now. So the Vfriends project is another one with a very big profile that's kind of showing us that good things are coming. So creator economy, might also hear it as the ownership economy or the passion economy. What are we talking about? Well, we are looking at all kinds of things around whether it's newsletters or whether it's things like publishing videos on YouTube, whether it is having stuff on Instagram or Twitch or TikTok, a Substack newsletter, a platform where you can publish newsletters and get paid directly. I'll show you that. All kinds of things like Patreon, where you can have a community that pays you every month to support what you're building as a creator. We've got all these different tools across everything, audio and video and content creation and streaming. And all of that stuff combined is what we're today calling the creator economy. Estimates are there are about 50 million content creators earning money in some way or another from this. Estimated right now at about $100 billion worth of capital flowing through the creator economy. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, esports, newsletters through Substack, podcasts, blogging, all of these different kinds of things. So all of that is what we're referring to as, again, this creator economy. And what we're going to find is people are looking for new ways to get closer to the creators, or for the creators to get closer to their fans, and also other ways to monetize that community itself. And so what we saw this past year and a half is that with people staying home and having maybe less to do, or having, discovering new hobbies or whatever that might be, the pandemic really accelerated the transition to a creator economy in a very big way. Tons of people, some of the biggest people in pretty much every vertical on YouTube right now started their channels last year. And just because they dove into it and they just focused on it, and whether it's because they were unemployed or because they had inside of a year that have become some of the most valuable on each of these platforms. But even if it's not the most valuable, lots of people have created a ton of revenue potential through all these different platforms that I just mentioned, and that we'll look at here in a little bit more detail. So for example, Patreon, there are over 200,000 creators on Patreon that you can support. There's a list here, but podcasters, video creators, musicians, visual artists, other communities, writers, gaming stuff. There's all kinds of things that we can be looking at. And the idea is real simple. If you want to have special access to, for example, your favorite YouTuber or Twitch or TikTok or things like that, one of the ways that you can do it is they can sell like a monthly subscription, where you can, if you pay $5 every month or $10 or $20 every month, you can have special access, special rights, get special merch, get a shout out in the next video, whatever that might happen to be. This, for a lot of people who are not terribly focused on watching stuff on these platforms, they don't understand how this can make much money. But the reality is that for people who are able to build a solid community, they make a lot more money from platforms like Patreon from their community than they do from the advertising that they get through on YouTube or any of these other places. The communities can actually contribute a ton. On Twitter, there are tons of people who made just crazy amount of money overnight when Twitter turned on tipping, because people could actually finally give $5 or $10 to somebody who they read every single day because they love their tweets. They love the threads of tweets that they're written. They get value from that information. And $5 is not a lot of money, but when 1,000 people give you $5, it starts to add up real quick. And some of these people have extremely large communities, and it just grows from there. It's the same math that kind of goes into like people not realizing that Pokemon Go still makes $100 million a month, or some just absolutely crazy amount, because it only takes a small amount of the players using any of these apps that give 5, 10, 20 bucks. All of a sudden you're dealing in the tens of millions of dollars very quickly. And so that's exactly what's happening on these platforms. So Patreon is one of the ones that's known most because it was a direct way to really give money to people that were creating content on all these different platforms. Stage It really came about and got a lot more visible during the pandemic because all of your favorite bands, they couldn't do concerts. So they either stayed home and had a concert on the sofa, or maybe they had a real concert in a space, but it was streamed. And so they were able to sell access to these sofa concerts or other concerts by using something like Stage It. And a lot of musicians were able to actually make pretty good money, especially the people who had small communities that were able to build those through the pandemic. There was quite a bit of very interesting stuff that happened for independent musicians, especially leveraging tools like this. A favorite musician of mine, Glenn Phillips, who is the lead singer of a band called Toad the Wet Sprocket from back in the day. He basically wanted to practice every day since he couldn't be on the road. So every day he just played for an hour, some of his songs, some of Toad's songs, some of the songs, other songs that he loved, but he was going to practice anyways. So he just plugged in and did a 1 hour show almost every single day for a year. And a ton of musicians did this. And what he started doing was, I mean, you could give him money through Venmo or through Patreon, but also he was using Facebook for people to donate to special causes. And so almost every day he would raise $1,000 or $2,000 for a new cause each and every day. So it was really amazing the amount of connecting that he was able to do with his community. And this was, there were thousands of artists that were able to do that, leveraging these platforms during the confinement of the pandemic. This is Substack. Substack is a newsletter platform where you can write an email newsletter to people. It also saves it in like a blog format that people can read on the web, but primarily is meant to also have those people be signed up onto an email list so that when you publish a new article, it gets sent out as a newsletter that increases the engagement significantly. The reason this is so important is there are thousands of professional journalists who either through unemployment or by choice have left leading publications and are now making in a month what they were making in a year working for that other outlet, because they're charging $5 a month, $10 a month for you to have access to their newsletter. And at 1,000 people, that starts to be very interesting very quickly. So in some of these, there are hundreds in each of these categories. There are hundreds in each of the categories that have thousands or tens of thousands of subscribers. So the amount of money being made here by individuals doing what they love and what they're great at, writing content about a specific topic, and Substack is enabling them to turn that into a business. So that was a quick idea of just some of the stuff that we're seeing. If you didn't realize that people were making so much money from social tokens, it's not just Instagrammers in Dubai on a yacht taking pictures for Instagram. There's a ton of really cool stuff going on in content creation from people who know a lot about a specific subject or have built a significant community around whatever it is that they happen to do on the platforms. So if we look at social tokens, creator coins, fan tokens, social money, we are looking at this idea of tokenizing a brand in order to provide basically these personal tokenized economies or a community, but the idea of having a digital economy revolving around brands tied to what it is at its core, a crypto asset through these different platforms that we're going to look at. So there's a bunch of different ones. Rally, Roll are probably the two biggest ones in the social token space for individuals. We're also going to see things like Chili's for the sports teams, like we saw with So Rare. We're going to see some stuff with DAOs, which I'll talk about a little bit later, these decentralized autonomous organizations. But there's a very, very quickly growing world of personal tokens. So like my Ethan token on Rally. Community tokens, where it's actually representing an organization that we'll look at some of those organizations. And then the platforms themselves, like Rally, which it has its own token that is a way for people to support the platform, not just the individual creators. Chili's, which is the token behind the Socios platform, which we're going to see. Socios is the platform that has created, for example, the Paris Saint-Germain token. So Chili's is the token that runs that. So we got these personal tokens, community tokens, and platform tokens, depending on who that's actually referring to. And then each of those has different benefits around why they exist and what they're being used for. This all started with a French guy, actually. In some ways, it began a lot with Alex, who now has an NFT platform called Showtime. But he tokenized himself in order to be able to move to San Francisco. He wanted to raise, I think, around $20,000 to be able to move and get himself set up in San Francisco to be able to figure some things out about what company he wanted to start and then eventually start that company. He was able to do that, sold the Alex token about 2 years ago, I think, a year and a half ago. And now he was able, pandemic slowed things down a little bit. Now he's in San Francisco building Showtime, an NFT platform. Socios is the platform behind a ton of sports fan tokens. Specifically, Paris Saint-Germain might be the one that people would know in this group, but also because recently, an interesting story, when Messi came over to PSG, he had a $40 million signing bonus. Not just, he was going to get paid a ton for each of the 2 years, but a $40 million signing bonus. And while they haven't said how much, estimates are pretty high that 5 to 10% of that signing bonus was paid in PSG tokens. And those tokens are held by fans, held by people who want to support and be a part of the community around Paris Saint-Germain. And they provide certain access by owning those tokens. Maybe you get to sit in a special section. Maybe you get to vote on the message on the captain's armband or the color of the next jersey, special merchandise, all kinds of things. So this is something that's very real, and even somebody like Messi is interested in taking a part of his signing package in those tokens because of what they represent. So if we look at Rally, again, this main platform that is doing the social tokens, we'll look at a couple different examples. There's another platform called Roll, and there we are. We're back recording. Okay, everything okay? We're all good, David? Okay. So if we look at Rally, and again, there are other platforms, but I'm using Rally because it is not only is it the one that I use, but I used it specifically because it's the leading platform in the space. They raised $50 million from their community 2 months ago. They just signed with United Talent Agency, which is a top tier talent agency. I think it's the second largest in the world, with 15,000 actors, musicians, athletes, esports athletes as well. And they're going to be working with them to start creating tokenized economies around those, very high level visibility type talents that don't just have 10 or 20,000 people on Twitter, but maybe have 10 or 15 million on Twitter or elsewhere. And so they're seeing that this can be a very interesting thing to build a digital economy that's directly tied to those communities. Tilt, Joe Paluzzi, Tilt is a digital marketing company that has, they do training and they do a bunch of different things. By holding a certain amount of Tilt coins, you get the training for free, or you get discounts on it. You get access to special content. That's why Joe is leveraging this here. If we look at another one, if we look at Ali is a Twitch streamer around some strategy games, and what she is doing with this, she primarily, I think, streams, I forget the game now, but she does weekly competitions where she actually sells an NFT as a ticket to the competition, and then anybody can then play in that competition if they have one of the NFTs that she's minted here on Rally. And then the money that went into that, part of that money represents the pool of money you can win if you win the competition. And all of that, so those NFTs are a kind of a second layer to this idea, but by holding the Ali coin, you get special roles on her Discord server, on Twitch. You get access to private channels, you get discounted merchandise or other certain things that ties around this. If we look down here at the total support right now for her coin, it's a little bit under $400,000, which is basically the market cap of her coin. That's how much money is in it. So this is somebody who is a mid-sized gaming streamer who is building a very solid and interested community around the games that she streams and that she plays. So we see a ton of examples of things like this. Another interesting one is a guy named Gary Henderson, who is a big digital marketing guy over the past probably 2 decades, and does a lot of different training, does a lot of different, has different books, does a lot of public speaking. And he's one of the main guys on Clubhouse, for example, which Clubhouse has kind of plateaued for a little bit, but is actually starting to have a resurgence and come back. He wrote the book that is just coming out on leveraging Clubhouse as a creator. One of the things interesting about Gary is that Gary built a community through his token here that he then built using a Discord server, which is a chat server that is has an API access to Rally, so that you can do things like you can token gate the Discord so that people get special access to private channels. They get special roles that say they own a certain amount of the tokens. So people are like, oh, I only own 15 of the tokens, but there's a role that's for 20. So I need to go buy 5 more tokens. But what's important is they have to hold them. They can't sell them. So by holding them, they increase that market cap of the amount of money that's actually in the token itself. So you start to build an asset base underneath this. So it's not just for the digital payments that we're going to look at. It's actually something that's starting to create more value underneath that, which causes the price to go up and causes, it creates an opportunity for the creator to have access to capital that they can build more resources for their community with. But what he did then, by leveraging this to build his Discord community, is he then created a series of NFTs around giraffes. Now, again, you don't have to like the artwork in NFTs, but this is a perfect example of how NFTs are not just about the artwork, they are about the community behind the NFT, because this Discord community is super active. I'm actually giving this keynote next week in Amsterdam at the Blockchain Expo, and 4 of the people from this Discord channel are coming to my keynote because I mentioned it to them, and I told everyone who owns a giraffe that they could get a free badge to the conference if they just let me know. Again, baking in some extra stuff because they own that that thing. I have 16 of these, which is probably too many. But you know, some of them are hysterical, and I found them interesting. But I also very much believe in the community that's being built, because he's building lots of interesting business models around the future of this. He's going to be acquiring more and more other high value NFTs that they're going to put into a library of NFTs that people who own a giraffe can check out one of those. So for example, if he had a Bored Ape, I could have checked out his ape to go to that party at NFT NYC. I don't need to own it. Leveraging the technologies that can be used here, I could actually borrow that NFT for its usage, whatever access gets into it, but the ownership would stay would stay this group's. And so anyways, this is one of these projects that is very emblematic of what's going on with the NFT community space right now, where it's like a 10,000 image set of NFTs, basically made through an algorithm of backgrounds and colors and all that kind of stuff to create unique images. And then you start building different business models into each of these things. And so not only does his token get you special access, for example, I own enough of his Gary token that I get free advisory access to him anytime I want, because I own a certain amount. So he reserves that level to people to have basically a coaching access. He also has built a lot of software that he's paid developers to build in order to leverage more stuff on his Discord, on Clubhouse, or elsewhere using Rally. And by owning a certain amount of his token, I'm allowed to leverage those technology solutions as well. So without having paid for it, in the sense of I didn't give him the money is actually sitting in the token itself, which through the economics of the token gives him a financial benefit, but I didn't buy the software from him. I'm basically getting the software as an add-on to the fact that I am holding money in his digital economy built around this token. And remember, these are not being called investments, because it's not about something going up in a speculative value. In fact, Rally has mechanisms in place so that you can only sell a certain amount of each token that you own, so that you can't dump things, and you can't do too much price manipulation to basically try and squish the speculative aspect of tokens on the platform. But then also by combining his token access with these NFTs, I get other values out of these assets of things that I can use or work with. So anyways, that's an interesting example. This is another one. The token first is if you go to this website and you've bought his token on the exchanges that sell it, and you connect with your wallet, basically when you enter the website, you can download royalty-free audio that you can use in your own NFT art pieces, because a lot of them have a soundtrack, especially the 3D ones that are like little mini movies or like a GIF, but they're little movies or 3D art. A lot of those actually have sound. And so he created a whole sound bank that you can use, but the way that you get it is by owning his token. So you connect your wallet, which gives you instant access to this website. And as long as you own those tokens, you can stay connected to the website. But because it's all tokenized, just like all this other stuff I saw, the moment that you dump that token, you lose access to all the stuff immediately. So it's instant in, instant out. If I want access to this, I just have to go buy the token. The moment the tokens are in my wallet, I have access to this community. The moment I get rid of them, I lose access. I mentioned the United Talent Agency that they just signed with at Rally. That's going to be a big, I think, push towards getting more and more people on this space. This is a mixture of a DAO, which we'll talk about a little bit, but also an NFT kind of, or a social token space. This is a community called Friends with Benefits. It actually doesn't mean friends with benefits from the sexual connotation of what that generally means. It's basically a community where the only way you can be in the community on the Discord is by owning some FWB tokens. That's it. You buy the tokens, you get on the Discord. You sell the tokens, you get kicked off. It's the ticket, and that's why this gets so interesting. If you want to be a part of this community, without caring about what this particular community is about, but it's a lot of crypto creators that are a part of this. But all of these ideas, it's just a simple way. You want access to something, you can buy the tokenized asset that gets you that access. The moment you no longer want access, you can liquidate that asset and move on. Chili's, I mentioned, was the token that is behind Socios. Socios is the platform that creates the Paris Saint-Germain tokens, and another 150 or 60 football clubs leverage Socios for their tokens. They'll be doing other sports as well. The Vault, so here's an interesting one. This, by buying some of the whale token, $whale, you have ownership of, you have this partial ownership of the Vault. And what he does with that capital is now he's out there buying other digital assets, in mostly NFTs. So he's building basically like almost a mutual fund of NFTs. So based on you investing in that fund, he takes that capital, buys high value, hopefully high value, long-term holding value or something where he's creating value. And now you can buy into that just by going onto an exchange that sells the whale tokens and buying them. And instantly, without being an accredited investor or any of the regulatory stuff that potentially can apply to these kind of things in depending on the market you live in, you can buy into this investment vehicle. So this one obviously would be considered a security because of the fact that you're expecting the value to go up and things like that. But on the social token stuff like Rally, it's not about the token itself gaining in value to put money in your pocket. It's about gaining access to the value of the token economy that's being built there through the other stuff, and or a way to do direct tipping. One of the things that I think I mentioned elsewhere, but I'll mention it here if I didn't, because on YouTube, Twitch and TikTok, you can lose up to 30% of your digital tips, or your payments that come from your fans. You can lose up to 30% in commission. If you were to go to Rally right now and send me and buy 20 bucks of Ethan to send me, I would get all $20. Rally takes zero. Like a typical exchange, they have other ways of making money, but it's not on those individual transactions. Now, when you sell it, they will take a piece of that, and I actually would get a piece of the sell as well, so that when you unload, I actually get a portion of that as a fee as well. But that's one of the ways that these platforms are offering potentially 0% commissions, but then having still a business model that creates a very interesting revenue for them. Rally itself is decentralizing itself. It was a private company, and now it is created 5 decentralized autonomous organizations that will run different pieces of the company, so that people who own the Rally token now actually will manage Rally itself. To basically take what needed to be centralized in order to start it, they're going to decentralize it through the token. And now you basically would own part of Rally by owning those tokens, and you get to participate in the governance of how those organizations, each of these different pieces, are being run and the decisions that they're making. So social tokens provide utility through the transactions, so these digital payments, by holding onto them and by earning. We'll look at this idea of platform independent monetization. Really, it's just this idea of if you like a YouTube video that I posted and you want to tip me, you can do that using Rally and I get all the money. If you do it on YouTube, I have to pay a commission. If YouTube demonetizes me, because they don't like the content, or I get a bunch of complaints because somebody wants to not dox, but wants to shoot, I'm missing the word, but they actually just changed this past week, because there's so many people using automation to flag competitors to try and get them blocked so they're not making money. This is a very real problem on some of these platforms, the aggressiveness around the money, that it's very interesting to have a platform independent revenue stream for your tipping or direct payments. And on top of that, through Rally and these other platforms, it's potentially feeless or very, very low fee. But then on the next piece, which is probably even more important, is just this community and fan engagement idea, being 1 degree away from the brands that you really like. So in the Discords, you see this with these different brands, getting special and early access to content, private things like channels or roles, discount codes for merchandise, special events. Gary, for example, just gave everybody who owns one of the giraffes, a friend of his has a virtual event for teaching people how to be better speakers for virtual events. It's about a $2,000 ticket digital marketing class online. And everybody who owns one of the giraffes got a free ticket if they wanted to go to it. That's actually happening tomorrow and the next day. And so there's a baked in value. Some of these people paid $100 for their giraffe, and now they're getting access to an expensive conference. Those things are going to continue to be built in to the models. And that is why people want to be a part of these social tokens, whether it's the social token $Ethan or it's the NFT piece of that concept baked together. That VIP access getting closer. The next one, though, could be really fun: unified subscriptions. Maybe I'm paying to have access to as a YouTube fan of a certain YouTube creator. I'm also paying on Twitch. Maybe I'm paying on Substack. Maybe whatever it is, where I've got several things out there where I'm paying the same creator to have access to different versions of their content. Potentially, we could get to a place where we could have one single subscription. So I could, using Rally, I could pay 10 or 20 bucks a month, and I could get access to the Twitch and the Substack and the YouTube or whatever. Not all these things are built yet, but they are coming. WordPress, for example, they've got a plugin with WordPress that should come out soon so that I can token gate pieces of a website. So the only way you get access to certain content on the website is by having access, by owning some of the social tokens related to that project. So having that kind of third-party subscription access could be very interesting to unify all of these disparate platforms that are not going to work together if not. And then voting access and governance is something we'll see with the DAO side of things that we're looking at. But this token gating thing, enabling this tiered access through the token, because you just get people to hold on to it instead of buy it to sell it as a typical crypto within, like speculative kind of thing. People buy and then they sell it when it is going to make them a little bit more money. The idea here is to encourage people to hold the token because of the value it brings them, not to simply try and speculate around it, because it's not to be considered an investment. So this idea of just all these different things, a real-time account balance that you can move in and out of for each creator. If you run into token-gated content anywhere on the on this decentralized creator economy type of web, all you have to do is buy the amount of token it needs, and you instantly have access to the content that you were just blocked from. It's all in real time. And then if at any point you get rid of those tokens, then you would lose access to that content. Think of this like kind of like frequent flyer miles. Some of this is just by holding it, you're going to get access to more and more value. Rally pays rewards to creator economies that are very active. They get more and more potentially rewards. And so some of these are getting $10,000, $20,000 worth of Rally a week given to the creator because of the activity of that social token community. And then most of those creators are taking the majority of those tokens that are being given to them and putting them back into their economy, or they're gifting them to the members as also a way to kind of share that success of those things. That's this Rally rewards idea that's gaining pretty well on the platform. So some platforms and tools. Roll is another thing like Rally. Obviously, we mentioned Rally. Galaxy is Spencer Dinwiddie, who's an is an NBA player, tried to tokenize his contract last year and it didn't work. Tried to do it 2 years ago, it didn't work. Tried it again last year and it didn't work because the NBA wouldn't let him. And so he created his own platform to basically allow people with value, like he had this, $40 million 3-year contract, and he wanted to basically provide tokenized access to that so that people could participate in his success. His benefit would be getting that money up front. Other people's benefits would be over his performance over those 3 years. And so he's created a whole platform called Galaxy to enable that for other people in a similar space, whether it's sports or musicians or others. Chili's, we've already talked about again. Outpost is like Substack, but it's a version of this that runs on social tokens. Social Stack is a platform to launch these tokens, but also some content tools. Social X is even further, where it's basically like a social media that wants to be kind of a Facebooky, Twitter kind of a thing, but running on the tokenization of these creators. So we'll see how those go. It's very hard to, there's a reason why Facebook became Meta, because they see the writing on the wall and they know so much of this is coming at them. The issue there is they're not decentralized. And so I don't know how much of it they're actually going to get, but it's a great sign for the creator economy that Facebook believed so much in the decentralized creator future that they renamed their whole company. And that's where this is going. So this is another one where you can basically, this audience is Spotify for social, using social tokens, same thing. And music NFTs, again, like I said, are going to be the thing in the next 6 months, are the next version of NFTs that are going to explode. And so we looked at some of the NFT stuff. I'm going to buzz through this because it's not terribly important. We've already covered most of it, but I don't want to take more time. Just to talk about this last thing here before I'm done, I'm almost done, is deplatforming and censorship. This is a big deal because last year or a year and a half ago, YouTube, because of a law in the US called COPPA that protects, that means that you can't leverage the data of minors, basically turned off the advertising, the targeted advertising of every single kid-focused creator on YouTube. There were people making $10 to $30 million a year with toy videos and cartoons and all kinds of stuff like that. And it turned into like a 5% of that revenue stream because they went from targeted advertising to untargeted advertising, because the application of the COPPA law meant that they could no longer target minors based on their viewing habits and what they were clicking on and other content that they were consuming. So it just totally took a massive chunk out of the revenue of that for these creators. So they need to find non-platform, independent revenue streams to tie into this. And then OnlyFans, which everybody will say they don't know what OnlyFans is, and everybody knows exactly what OnlyFans is, as this application where basically during the pandemic, lots of people who were home decided to make a little bit of money by becoming on-screen adult entertainers. And there are people who were making $10, $50, $100,000 a month on OnlyFans simply because the same thing. And when somebody's giving you $5 a month or $10 a month for something, the economy of scale of having 1,000 people do that or 10,000 people do that creates a lot of revenue. In September, they said they were going to bar sexually explicit videos because Visa, MasterCard were going to cut them off and they could no longer accept credit card payments. Well, then, of course, everybody was like, well, there are 4 people on OnlyFans that have cooking shows. Everybody else is an adult entertainer. What's the point of OnlyFans if it's not adult? So there was this huge big mess. And finally, OnlyFans was able to strike a deal with another Visa, MasterCard payment provider to be able to get payments for adult activities. So they're going to stay. But everybody was like, what is OnlyFans if they get rid of what they've been built around? The point is that even if you're not doing something in the adult space or in maybe even in crypto or other things, you can get deplatformed for lots of reasons by these main platforms or by the typical payment infrastructure of the centralized finance world. And so that's where a lot of this social token stuff is coming from as well, is how can we provide a direct payment structure between content creators and the people who are supporting them, without potentially getting blocked because a fan is no longer able to give them money. Legal concerns, securities laws will matter in this. Right now, most of the social token space is believing that they are not securities because they are aggressively not allowing them to be called investments, to be sold as investments. They have lots of software in place with algorithms to keep the speculation activities down. For example, if I called my token on Rally an investment, it would probably last about a day and a half before I'd be kicked off of Rally. First of all, I'm not going to do that. And second of all, I don't believe it, because I don't believe the value is in the value of the token and trying to, if you want to do that, go play with Ethereum and Bitcoin and all the other crypto stuff you can play with. Go do some DeFi lending or other things. What this is about building community and about the direct payments, the direct digital payments ideas of this. There's also an issue of, depending on where you're at, there's some false advertising or exclusivity issues around the fact that you're paying to have special access. That can actually matter depending on, are the people actually following through with the access? Are they creating the value they say they're creating for you to get access to if you hold the token? And then endorsements with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission in the US. This is the reason why when people post sponsored tweets or on Instagram, or other places, they have to say, this is a paid tweet. This is a sponsored Instagram post. If you do not, the FTC can come along and fine you very, very significantly, because by law, you have to disclose, at least in the US, that you're being paid to endorse a certain product, especially if you have lots of non-paid content. If you have 100 videos where you're not getting paid to talk about stuff like hotels because you travel a lot, and then all of a sudden you show this other video where you talk about how this hotel you just were at was absolutely amazing and the best place you ever stayed, except they paid for you to do that, you have to disclose that, because it colors your, people need to know that that potentially was not completely unendorsed. So the last piece of this, and then we are finished, DAOs. I only mention this because you're going to want, if you don't know what DAOs are, decentralized autonomous organizations, you are going to be hearing all about them because they're the next big thing, because they are what's underneath DeFi. Decentralized finance is decentralized. Well, if that's the case, who runs it? Well, the people who have the token run it, because DAOs give governance to the people who own a token in a particular project. The people who make the decisions, who are the administration of something, are the people who own the tokens in it, because by definition, decentralized means nobody is above it in terms of owning it and having centralized control. So pretty much all the DeFi projects have a DAO-like mechanism built in, even if they don't consider it exactly that. I mentioned FWB before with Friends with Benefits, but this is a DAO, because not only are you paying to get access, but potentially you get, as they do things, or at the management of the community, the decisions are taken by people who own the tokens. That's pretty cool. Flamingo is an NFT fund, meaning, like the whale one I showed you earlier, if you go invest DAO into DAO, if you go invest into this DAO by putting some Ethereum into it, then you would be a part of not only the management, the decision-making process of this organization, but also it's an investment fund. They're buying NFTs as an investment fund, and at 7,920 Ethereum, that's about 35 million bucks, I think, that they raised to invest with. There's another one called Meta Cartel. Do not be overly impressed by the absolute 1997 version of this super crap website. They are an early seed investor in a ton of DeFi and social token and NFT stuff. This is very counter kind of culture or stuff. This is them being, they're embracing their idea by having a website that looks like this. But the whole idea is it's a venture fund that is run as a DAO. So the people who are putting the money into the fund through the decentralized autonomous organizations tokens run the fund. And then that money is distributed through that management out into investments. Rarible, which is one of the main NFT platforms, for example, they're an early stage investor in Rarible, a bunch of other things. But so this is interesting to having these organizations. I even mentioned it to David that if they wanted to have an organizational structure of something like blockchain at HEC, Well, if you want that to be something that's run by the community, that's exactly what a DAO could do. It doesn't have to be about money. It's about governance. It's about giving administrative or management rights to the members of a community based on a token. And the last one to give as an example here, because it's this week, in 2 days, Sotheby's will auction off one of only 11 existing copies of the United States Constitution. They expect it to go for about $20 to $30 million. Last week, some people decided that maybe these copies of the Constitution shouldn't all be in private collectors' homes for them to look at. Maybe these things should also be in the public. And so this is a DAO that anybody that is watching this can go to constitutiondao.com and they can put Ethereum into this project. And they are hoping, and in 2 days, they have raised $6 million. So they're well on their way. It's only been 2 days that they launched the funding. They are well on their way to having enough. And Sotheby's has said that if they have the money, they will accept it in Ethereum. And so the potential is that this group of people, I put a little bit of money into Constitution DAO. So if they actually succeed, I will own a very, very, very small piece of the United States Constitution, which will then, by the organization of this DAO, the idea is to put it into a not-for-profit museum so that people can have free access to this document, that it would not be a fee situation, that it would go to a museum that would allow free access for people to experience this document as part of the ethos, really, of this project. And so we'll see if it actually works. And even if it doesn't work, it's amazing what they've managed to pull off in just a week that they've tried to do this. But it's probably the biggest buzz right now going on. My last article on LinkedIn has a bunch of links to this subject if you're interested in the Constitution DAO. It's a fascinating subject that we could do this, and to do it for kind of a altruistic reason, not a capitalistic reason, is very interesting. So last piece of stuff here, and then I am done to take your questions, although I did actually go much over and talked a lot, but that I got excited about some of the topics, is if you'd like to try out Rally and play around with the social token space, I'd be happy to give you a couple dollars of Ethan just to play with. All you have to do is scan this QR code. It will take you to a website called Bonfire. Through that website, you will sign up, and then you need to create your Rally account if you don't already have one. If you have to create your Rally account, you might have to come back to this QR code. But the point is it will allow you to get an airdrop. So once you connect to Bonfire with your Rally account, which is super simple, except most of you won't have a Rally account, so you have to go create one. But once you do that, you can click and you will automatically get $5 of Ethan in your Rally account on rally.io. So feel free to play around with that. Give me your feedback. If you have thoughts and ideas, I would love to hear any ideas that you have about this. Well, we'll go from there. But that was monetizing the creator economy through social tokens and NFTs and DAOs, just because there's a lot of movement in the space. It's the same QR code if you haven't taken a picture of it yet, if you want to do that. And feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or by email. I'm always happy to connect with people when I can to help explain things, or if you feel like there's an opportunity for me to help you in some way by, if you have an organization or another thing like this at Blockchain at HEC. I love sharing the excitement around these topics. I love tokenized securities, the idea of every real world asset becoming tokenized. I love DeFi in the sense that I think most centralized finance will have a decentralized version, whether it's loans or crowdfunding or stocks or whatever that might, insurance, whatever that might happen to be. And I think the creator economy is going to become absolutely incredible through these tools that we're seeing come about through NFTs and social tokens and DAOs. Feel free to reach out if I can be of help in some way. And now I'm yours for any questions you might happen to have.
Yeah, we have some. Thank you so much for your presentation, Ethan. Very nice. Thank you. Few questions. We talked. I mean, I introduced yourself. I introduced you a little bit at the beginning of the presentation. But could you just tell us how you you dived into the crypto sphere, the crypto world.
Yeah.
And yeah, and just a little bit about your background also, and yeah, it would be very nice.
Yeah. So the when I was from 2015 to 18, I was managing partner of Nest Venture Capital in Hong Kong and Singapore. Nest built accelerators for all the big banks and insurers in the region. So OCBC Bank and DBS Bank are the two largest banks in Southeast Asia. AI Insurance is the largest insurer in Southeast Asia and the second largest, I believe, in the world, because it's very China and Southeast Asia and not just globally. It was the insurance piece from AIG. So Nest built their accelerators, which were basically, since this was in Southeast Asia, we were dealing with helping these companies solve business problems related to primarily Southeast Asia. We would go out and find global startups that could help address these localized kind of problems that the business units might be having. And in 2015, 16, 17, this was very much around things like the unbanked, cross-border remittance. The fact that in Singapore, downstairs from my office was a little tiny booth about, this big, where twice a week, there would be a couple hundred Filipinos lined up in order to send money home to their family. And that transaction could cost them 20 or 30%, and they were only sending a couple $100s. So not only are we talking about not a lot of money in the sense of the large idea, but to them, an incredibly important amount of money that they were sharing with their family. And yet they were losing a ton of it to fees. There's some reasons why, because some of this is based on personal trust, because it's not like in big cities where you can Western Union money and go to an office. I mean, in some of these places, you're sending money to a village that may not even have reliable utilities in parts of Southeast Asia, let alone a local branch of Western Union or something. And so sometimes that money is going through a trusted network of people who they just, I send money to my friend or my connection who's in Jakarta, and then he calls his friend or his connection who is in Bali, and then he calls his connection who is in a village outside of Bali. And by just trust and word of mouth, my money can go from one of these people to the next. So there is a network in there that's built in where there was a reason why fees were being applied. But tokenizing these things makes lots of sense. Coins.ph is one of the startups that we invested in. It's worth a couple $100 million now. That basically is a digital wallet. If you go into any of the 15,000 7-Eleven, little markets across Southeast Asia, you can take the $2 or $3 that you made today selling fruit or doing some kind of a menial task, but is the way that you make that living and is potentially an average, income for that particular place and demographic. The problem is that's too small. You're completely unbanked because you can't possibly afford the fees of a bank because we're talking very small sums. However, you can take that money into a 7-Eleven now, and they will put it onto your coins.ph wallet, a digital wallet, which you can then use to pay for things online. You can use to pay for groceries at the 7-Eleven. You could pay your telephone bill. You could pay for micro insurance or micro loans, all kinds of things that you can do that people want access to, just in much smaller dollar amounts than we might be used to because we think on a different scale of economy. But all that stuff can exist on a much smaller level if you can get rid of the fee structure and you can automate things. And so tokenization did that. So I got into this because we were working with startups that were solving problems using tokenization. Not all of it, but there was some of it that was that, and it just introduced me to some very smart people. Singapore, where I was living at the time, halftime between Paris, where I'm at normally, and there, has also been very forward thinking in this space. The government actually invited Vitalik Buterin, the guy who, one of the guys who founded and created Ethereum, to speak, and I saw him in 2016 at basically the Business France French Tech equivalent in Singapore, had him there for one of the meetups. And I got to hear him talk for 2 hours about this is what Ethereum is, all the way up to super complex ideas he had about the future of building it over the course of 2 hours. And he explained it just brilliantly. And all those things kind of combined when I left Nest, I knew that, well, even before that, I knew that the future of a lot of the things I wanted to be a part of was going to be tokenized. But I also, because I've built, some digital marketing and e-commerce companies. I've done some other different things where, to me, I believe in building real companies, whether it's as an entrepreneur or as an investor. I don't believe in the fake crap that a lot of the overly optimistic or enthusiastic crypto stuff has been doing. I was not a big part of the ICO space because I was asked to advise a lot of projects, and I refused pretty much all of them because I just felt like they were probably either not going to go anywhere because it wasn't going to work, or many of them were just outright fraudulent and I was not going to have anything to do with them. But the point is I've been bullish about this space from the moment I got involved in it, but bullish from a more traditional perspective. Does that answer?
Absolutely, thank you, Ethan. One next question is about the Ethan token actually. What is the role of the Ethan token, and if it's possible that you tell us about because every startup actually start a project has a backstory, and could you tell us about this one of these stories and how it has led to the development of your project actually?
For the Ethan coin?
Absolutely, exactly. Yeah.
So the version of that is, and this is, it ties back to my main theme I'm always telling young entrepreneurs about, which is the value of your network. And I spoke at a conference in Sofia, Bulgaria in 2019, and met a guy named Jeremy Oyang, who is a big thought leader in Silicon Valley around lots of different topics, but he's definitely been, during the pandemic, he focused a lot on remote work trends. And then he's also been a big thought leader in the creator economy space. He's now an advisor at Rally as well. He was one of the first ones I saw that was doing stuff with a token from Rally. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And so as I tend to do, I sent Rally an email saying, hi, my name's Ethan, and my friend Jeremiah has a token with you, and I think it's a pretty interesting idea. And I have this podcast called the Blockchain Economy News. I also do another one called the French Tech News, which is everything about the French tech ecosystem and its entrepreneurs and stuff, but in English, because a lot of this stuff is not really discoverable outside of our community. And I do a lot of other media for other podcasts and other things. And I speak at tons of conferences, which is part of all of that, brings me value that I can either work with through Borderless or through the Crypto Assets Institute. But I have all this community around me that I have built and that I'm continuing to build. Would that be interesting? And at this point, there's actually several thousand people in line wanting to get to launch a Rally coin. Now it's in the tens and tens of thousands that want to get something launched on Rally. And I managed at like number 147 or something for them to say, yeah, that sounds really cool. We should launch an Ethan coin. So some of the examples I showed you with Gary, for example, is a very good example of people building value with the social token. The streamers that are on Rally, a guy named Brian Fanzo, who has the ADHD token because he has ADHD and is very proudly ADHD powered from his perspective, is a big keynote speaker in the US at a lot of marketing and entrepreneurial conferences and things like that. They've built really interesting communities, much more than me from this. And I'm actually both studying them and working with them to kind of build this new digital kind of creator economy component onto what has primarily been offline for me, which has been speaking at conferences. Like tomorrow, I'm the MC for the AI for Health conference at Station F. Next week, I'm an MC and keynote speaker at the Blockchain Expo in Amsterdam. That's a lot of what I've done historically that I was able to do from home here in a kind of studio environment during the pandemic, but I need a larger digital funnel to kind of connect all of those things, because the virtual mix of the physical conferences and the digital stuff matter. Plus, I think there's a lot of things that I can potentially be doing through some online training and some of the other resources that I'm working on that make complete sense to build it around my own digital community that I can animate through the token. For example, I've just launched a Discord that has like 6 people in it, but I'm just beginning, to play with the tools and to see how do I I'm not an influencer like an Instagrammer or YouTuber in that sense. I am doing more and more of that content through the main two podcasts, and there'll be a lot more of that over the coming months. So that transition puts me a little bit in that space, but it's also just how do I create value using that. So for me, I'm not a great use case yet for Rally's social tokens, but I have a very large community that I am now driving towards that to build a very good use case. LinkedIn's like 22,000 connections, which of course means nothing because I don't know hardly any of those people. But you know, that's how these things go. But the point is I have a very strong network, but it's primarily offline, organized through some online tools that I am now starting to divert into this social token. And by nature of that, some of the tools that I can leverage. So the Discord will be part of that. Some Clubhouse stuff, because I may start doing some Clubhouse, some social audio again. I did a ton earlier this year, and then it really kind of dove off, but now it's kind of coming back up into an interesting place. The WordPress thing, I think, will be really helpful because I can start putting up some content or resources or videos or other things, but in the context of the website that would able to be token gated. So as these tools kind of grow, it'll be more useful to me because right now the people getting a ton of leverage out of this are people who are streaming on Twitch or YouTube or things like that, where they have a 100% digital community that knows them through chatting and that kind of interaction. That's an easy win for social tokens. For people like me, I'm figuring out the hybrid version. But for Gary, as a perfect example, both his NFT project, which is going to have tons of these baked in values, one of which is me inviting some of those people to a conference I'm speaking at, but he's launching his Clubhouse book is published, I think, in a month or a month and a half, or I guess about a month now on, you know, it's coming out, and he's using all of this social token and Discord community to drive the funnel towards his NFT project and towards his book launch, and it's working.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Ethan. And one last question more about venture capitalism and business angel. Actually, how do you see the venture capitalists and business angels, and when do you recommend to solicit them? And
sorry, the audio bugged for a second there.
Oh, sorry. When would you recommend to solicit venture capitalists and business angels? And also, what advice would you give to a startup needing to solicit them?
So this is a non-blockchain crypto question, right? It's just pure investor context. So
yeah, and maybe if you have like maybe tips for the specific domain of blockchain for startups, of course, don't hesitate. But I mean, yeah, you're right. It's more like a global question, and if maybe there's some specificity for the blockchain startups, that would be also helpful.
So yeah, I mean, 90% of the answer is not vertically not vertical specific in terms of what kind of topic we're talking about: fintech, health tech, space tech, IoT, consumer hardware, whatever. This actually goes back to my earlier thing. All my keynotes seem to come back to my networking keynote, but which is the value of relationships. And so whether you want to get money from an investor or whether you want to work in venture capital, I know that's not the question, but it comes up a lot as well. It's all about network. It's not even about who you know, it's about who knows you. In English, we say a lot of times, it's all about who knows, it's all about who you know. And the problem with that is I actually know a lot of, I'm very well connected, but I'm still a medium fish when it comes to people who are very, very much more connected than me. And so in that idea, I know lots of people who don't necessarily know me. They wouldn't think of me whenever they had a problem to solve or they needed something that I could help with. So the value proposition there is in me making sure that lots of people, that I continue to turn that second degree network into a first degree network. So pretty much because of all the people that I have connected well with, I know everyone else in a second degree way because it goes very, very, very quick. I mean, once you know one single investor, you know most of the other investors in an ecosystem or in a vertical. If you know 2 or 3 of them, you know all of them. So it's very quick to have a 2-degree connection to every single investor that you need to speak to. Or whatever else that might be. If it's not investors, this can apply to media as well, to journalists, or can apply to people who can help your business or your activity in whatever way. So it's very easy to, once you start networking a bit, to have a very large 2nd-degree network. On LinkedIn, it shows you this, and it's very easy with just a couple thousand 1st-degree connections to have a couple million 2nd-degree connections very, very quickly. That doesn't mean that you can leverage those easily, but it does mean that they are not completely unknown and on the other side of the world. So having a network that's connected is really useful, because when you want to raise money, most likely the best way to do it is to go through the people who know you and who believe in what you're building, because they either believe in you or they believe in what you've already built, or whatever. The same thing would be true if you're trying to get a job in a fund, because those things almost never make it to a job board. They almost always hire from the people they know, that they have met along the way. And so networking in that space and getting to know people and expressing your interest to work in that space and creating value somewhere else or in some other way for those people in the meantime is the way to eventually get noticed and potentially asked to be a part of something. I mean, if whatever the subject is, I know tons of people who have recently gotten picked up by Andreessen Horowitz or Gemini or any of these organizations that have a ton of money that are wanting to pour it into crypto stuff. And many of the people that are being hired in as associates or even partners are people who've been in the space in blockchain or crypto for the past couple of years and have created tons of value somewhere else, whether it was through media or building their own project or whatever. And then when it came time for them to hire new people in the fund, the conversation just came up. And that's very true in pretty much every vertical. There's a little difference between that in the US, where a lot of venture investors are entrepreneurs that have become investors, versus Europe, where a lot of venture investors are MBA educated finance professionals who've gone into venture. But in either case, it's you're probably not getting in through the front door. So how do you raise money? You know the investors who can give it to you, and you create relational value with them over time. So when you go to an event like Web Summit or CES or the Next Web or Slush or VivaTech or whatever, and you meet these people, you don't necessarily, you meet them without asking them for money. You meet them and say, hey, listen, I'm working on this project. Right now, it's too early to talk to you about it from an investment perspective, but I'd really love your input over the next 6 to 9 months as I build more value. You know, if I have any questions that you might be able to help with, so I make the right choices. If you reach out in that way, you will find there will be a lot of people who will be willing to, in a limited, respectful manner, help you. And then the brilliant thing is eventually those people will be exactly who invest in your company if you do create the value you said you were going to create, because they've seen you build it over time. And they've also began to get closer to you from a relationship perspective and know a little bit how you work, understand your character and things like that. To be honest, a ton of the best investments come that way. There's a lot of money flying around right now, so pretty much you can get funded in early stage if you have a decent idea and you manage and you study, you know, the mechanism of asking for money. You will find money for your startup. The question is, did you find it from people who can help you build the company, who can help you later, or did you just find some cash? Yeah, right. That's fine. Cash is good, but eventually it's better to find people who can help you build a better company faster. Which again, then the relational piece comes in. Totally works for journalists. Never, ever, ever send a press release to a journalist you've never spoken to before. They won't even read it. Say hi to them, hang out with them at a conference, build value by sending them some cool stories that you think they might be, that their audience might be interested in, not because you're pitching them a story, but because you think, well, I know you like this, so I thought I'd send it to you. Building value with those kind of people, they will listen to you when it's your turn. So
amazing. Thank you.
That would be my short version of how to leverage a network and raise money or get connected to other people.
You mentioned also the Web Summit, and this is maybe it could be also one of the last questions, and to conclude also linked to this topic of this conference. can you tell us about just your impression about the last Web Summit, and and what was your impression about the creator economy there in Lisbon? I mean, we talked a little bit about that already, and I know that
Web Summit was very interesting because it really showed that we can, Vivatech actually did a great job of this in the end of June, July, where we were able to have a conference in Paris that was much smaller than it normally was, but was safe. Like we were able to go and be healthy. Everybody, it was the same amount of space, more or less, for a lot less people. Everyone was masked, everyone was vaccinated or tested. And because there was a much smaller group of people, you weren't in proximity in the same ways. Web Summit was very similar, although it was 40,000 people, which is half the normal size. So it was less, but it was still a very big and full conference. It has been, what now, almost 10 days. And I haven't heard of a single person who got sick because of going to Lisbon for Web Summit. And statistically, there have to be some, and that would make complete sense. But because of the government's preparation, because of the high vaccination rate, because of the rigidity of the rules around letting people in the building, but also in people staying masked, the fact that it was a little bit more spaced out because there were less people, but it was still fairly dense. Like it was, I was a little bit like, don't touch me. Like there was just a little bit, too many people after living in the apartment, with the doors locked and getting Uber Eats and Amazon. It felt weird to be around that many people, but I'd been to London for a conference and a few other conferences as well here in Paris. The Next Web in Amsterdam a little over a month ago. They're all kind of scaling up towards what we saw at Web Summit, which was if you put all those things in place, more or less, you can do business and no one gets sick. That there's 0% risk is just not statistically, that would be ridiculous to say that, but so low that it's arriving at zero. I heard nothing from anyone about any possible anything. And again, I'm sure that has come up and that it will come up, but didn't come up in any mass numbers. And so that I think is very interesting that we can get back to, for people that need to travel for business, not all conferences are necessary. Not all conferences, people don't need to travel for all conferences. I think from a sustainability perspective, I think it's also great that we don't necessarily travel for everything. If we don't have to, I think that's a great thing as well. But there are certain things that you can only do in person. And while the investment space has done just fine remotely, while actually tons of startups met their co-founders at Web Summit, that was a fun story. Like 2 or 3 people who started a company together a year ago, and they met when they got to the same hotel together in Lisbon, because they're in 3 completely different places because they started the company under lockdown. Those stories exist, or those startups meeting their investors for the first time in person. Like there is a lot of that, and that's going to continue in certain ways. So I think that's pretty cool. But CES in Las Vegas in January will be another kind of test of this, because CES is a trade show, which even more than a typical regular conference, it has to be physical. Because you need to be in front of the thing that you're buying, like because it's consumer hardware. It's hard to maybe experience that in the same way, and for that business to be done in the same way. And then with Web Summit and these other events, there's just a ton of serendipity. You're walking around and you see somebody you haven't seen in 2 years or more. And wow, you're here. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Or they're with a friend who you should know but have never met, and so now you meet them. None of the digital platforms figured that out.
Absolutely.
None of them.
And that's the unicity of human nature, and absolutely. So that's the magic. And,
so I think that for the event space, that's the cool thing, is the serendipity of it. It worked. We can continue to do business. We can continue to do that in a safe way. Not everybody has to go to those events, but for the ones that do, those pieces we couldn't replicate digitally, we can do them. So
and actually, it didn't work for that time, but for sure next time we we organize this kind of conference, we'll make it like physically on campus or in the office, in the HEC alumni office. Of course, it could be much better, and I hope we'll do that.
The feedback from an audience to a speaker is really important, but also just we're so immersed in digital content that, you know, watching videos on YouTube, watching stuff on Netflix, there's something different about that interaction when it's in person. But I'm not necessarily even a big going to conference to listen to people speak person. Funny enough, since I'm one of those people very often, but for me, it's all about that serendipitous networking. It's about meeting people, or it's about the fact that when I walk off stage, I get to talk to 10, 20, 30 people, and which I won't be able to with this, which is fine. That's normal. But a lot of the conversion of value of me sharing ideas about a topic and you receiving them and then us having a chat about that, it doesn't exist. And that's unfortunate. I still think it can be very valuable, but yes, when possible, I think it's super interesting to be able to do these things in person. So with pleasure.
Thank you so much, Ethan, for your presentation. It was really a great pleasure to welcome you on the Blockchain at HEC. Maybe a few words for the end. What would you say, like for young HEC students willing to join the startup ecosystem and create a startup?
I think both in startups in general, but also in the specific topic to our thing here around blockchain and crypto, is it's very easy to look at everything that's being built around us and think that everything's already done. There's no more opportunity. And while that's very true in certain verticals, the reality is disruption comes back around at you. Innovation is a funny thing. And when it comes to the blockchain and crypto space, we're still at the very beginning. Most people don't, I mean, when you look at the amount of wallets, unique wallets that exist and or things on certain platforms, we're still only talking about a tiny percentage of the world's population that is really in the blockchain economy and working around tokenized assets or any of this space around NFTs, social tokens, DAO, DeFi, all these kind of things. It's actually a very small number. Even though when we look at it, we see people who have done so much more than us and think, wow, I missed the boat on that. Yes, I don't own a board ape, and I don't have any Vfriends, but I have others, and I will definitely get some of the other cool things that come along because I will be in the know for other projects that I wasn't necessarily for those. The idea there is if you're interested in these topics, everything is yet to be built or built again and better. My perfect example of that right now is a couple years ago, the worst place on the planet to get a taxi was Paris. Worst taxis on the planet, bar none. Super happy that Uber came along and disrupted the heck out of that. Do you know what I take every time I call for something now? A G7. Because now Uber is absolute crap in Paris. And when I use my app to get a G7, it's either the same price, sometimes cheaper. It's a high-end BMW or Mercedes for the same price. It's a driver that is polite and taking care of things like putting my luggage in the trunk, or like it just the stuff that I was getting with Uber, because it disrupted the taxis that weren't doing that. And now one of the taxi companies is disrupting Uber by doing Uber better. So even if you think stuff has already been done, there's a good chance that it can get done again. Or in certain topics, so much of it is still left to be created. So I would just take that as an encouragement to go build things, to experiment and to build stuff and to play. At this point, since age-wise, you know, I don't want to be stereotypical, but most likely you're probably all in your 20s, maybe early 30s at this point, depending on who you are. But you've got so much time ahead of you. You should be experimenting with your investments, with what you're building, because compounding interest is your friend, and you'll make more money in case you blow a bunch of it now buying the wrong NFT because you thought it was cool, but it wasn't worth anything, you know, or whatever that might be. But eventually you can rebuild that. A 50 or 60-year-old person, I'm not going to tell them to go out and put half of everything they make into crypto. because that might be really stupid. But in case this all falls apart and is worthless, but I would easily tell that to every 25-year-old, because the potential upside is so big compared to the downside. Okay, so maybe you lose some money because this actually didn't all work. You'll go make more. And that, I think, is the encouragement is right now, maybe take the more experimental, cautious and smart choices route of taking advantage of youth to potentially get ahead of this. The democratization of the financial world is happening right now, and generational wealth is being created by people who built something 6 months ago. Do you know who is making the most money from NFTs right now? It's teenagers who are playing with their phones on Discord and on Instagram and on Twitter, and they are making tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, because it's the world they live inside of chatting apps, inside of this discussion, and they are learning about the cool communities, which is the value that's really bringing value to these NFTs. And they're throwing some money at it, or they're even getting the free ones, because early on, a lot of this stuff in a project, you can get free ones, or you can mint them at the very beginning for like $100 maybe, or whatever. And these kids have flipped that into now small fortunes growing into large fortunes. Anybody can get started in this space now and not only find financial security, but also just be a part of some really interesting innovation. So there you go.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Ethan. Thank you all. I wish you a very nice evening. And I hope to see you soon again on Dr. Natasha C. Thank you, Ethan.
Merci, David.
Bye-bye.